Before dreamers like Hayao Miyazaki, Stan Lee, or Walt Disney, before modern comics, or anime, or CGI, there was an absolute one-man army of an artist who dared to stand alone to bring to life his imagination in ways others had never thought possible. That's right. Winsor McCay didn't just draw pictures, he painted a window into the world of our dreams. This is the story of the most important artist you've never heard of, and why and how his work still shapes your imagination today. Your little imagination in your head. Winsor McCay, the most important artist you've never heard of. Born around 1866 in rural Michigan, or possibly Canada, nobody really knows to be honest, Winsor McCay showed incredible talent from an early age. He could draw anything he saw, and not like most kids. His drawings were accurate, and they were nice to look at. He did so without any formal training or mentorship, and he was truly talented in an unusual way. His work was really good. As a young man, he moved to Chicago, and then Cincinnati, where he worked in dime museums and theaters. Pretty crazy, right? Back then, the museum was like a dime to go to, and that was, like the spot. You go to a museum or a theater, what else are you going to do? There's like the two cool things you had to do back then. So, a dime is pretty good. Although, I think a dime was worth a lot more back then. But anyway, back to the story. He was sketching freak show posters and illustrating acts for passing crowds. It was in these energetic and chaotic spaces, equal parts vaudeville and sideshow, that McCay learned a key lesson. Art should entertain. I need to remind myself that. In the early 1900s, newspaper comic strips were considered childish, and they were often looked down upon, causing them to struggle to gain popularity. But in spite of this, Winsor McCay, he immediately blew up when he started putting out his newspaper comics. Right away. First was Little Sammy Sneeze. That's what they used to call me back in the day. A strip about a boy whose unstoppable sneezes caused chain reaction disasters. It was simple and silly, but it was drawn with incredible precision. As usual, he was pumping out bangers. Then came Dream of the Rarebit Fiend, a comic about normal people having insane dreams due to overconsumption of cheese. This comic served as inspiration for a variety of future television series such as The Twilight Zone and Black Mirror, but even more importantly, according to me, it must have been what led him to his magnum opus. Drumroll please. Little Nemo and Slumberland. That's right, my favorite and probably most people's favorite work of Winsor McCay who are into him because it just had so much to it in terms of story and so on. Little Nemo and Slumberland. Really cool. Each Sunday, readers got a new issue of Little Nemo and Slumberland, and they could follow along as Nemo descended into surreal dream worlds. He'd ride on bed-turned trains, whatever that means. Oh, I see. Beds turned into trains. So, okay. He'd ride on beds that turned into trains. He'd walk through melting architecture and mushroom forests, fall out of floating cities through clouds and stuff. And he'd wake up in bed, confused but enchanted. I'm sure a lot of us have had that kind of experience before. It wasn't just about the beautiful artwork, it was adventurous and eclectic. It was a mix of magic and mystery, but most of all, it was a window into the subconscious. McCay had, perhaps knowingly, maybe unknowingly, I don't know, I've never heard him talk about this before, and I didn't really see anything about it online when I was researching, but I think he had really tapped into a common experience and a shared world that we all have, and other people haven't really taken time to acknowledge it, especially in the modern age, which was, at that time, quickly becoming more secularized and despiritualized, if that's even a word. And, look where we are now. It's even more so that way than ever, and people are really craving these things, so I think it's worth checking out. Little Nemo allowed readers to connect in a deeper way than the other comparatively mundane series did. And, to top it all off, every single page looked like it could be up on the wall of an art gallery, and yet it was printed in a daily newspaper comic for kids. Kind of crazy, but it's this kind of contradiction that in many ways defined Winsor McCay's career, unfortunately, as we'll come to see as things go on. Now, in 1911, McCay decided to share his imagination and his inner world in a way that others could have never predicted or have really dreamed of. At least most people couldn't have. He wanted to make his pictures move. I know that doesn't seem that crazy, right? Like, everything we're seeing is moving all the time. But to take a drawing or a painting and actually make it move in a convincing and interesting way that wasn't just a gimmick, that's way bigger than people really realize now. I think people don't realize how much work it even takes now, to be honest, to make animations. It's a lot of work. It's really hard. And you need a lot of knowledge, and animators are underpaid, so go support your local animator. But, yeah, back then it was a totally different story. I mean, it was almost impossible, right? So there had been some crude attempts at animation before McCay, but it's common with most new art forms and technologies that they can get kind of gimmicky. So, in modern times we have VR, AI video, etc. They're just kind of unfleshed out, not fleshed out. They're gimmicky. They're used for kind of maybe some whimsical crafts, some things here and there. Nothing particularly crazy or interesting. You might get a dark fantasy night or something. Probably the coolest thing AI video produces. So it is what it is. We'll get cooler stuff in the future, I'm sure. But McCay was ready to change this. He didn't want animation to be a gimmick. He saw it for the art form that it could be, not necessarily the art form that it currently was. And so he was ready to, as with his previous products, produce something that really was nothing short of a miracle. Incredible. His first short film, Little Nemo of 1911, brought Nemo, Flip the Clown, the Slumberland Princess, and the Little Imp to life with style. Style, baby. He not only used this as an opportunity to tell a story in animated form, but he made a whole short film within which the animation was embedded. So he told the whole story of how he created the animation and all of the trials he went through, and in a whimsical and interesting and fun way, and then he actually had the animation built into it. So not only was this one of the first real animations, especially of the nature that it is, a true fleshed out short animated film, it was embedded within another film. So he was already inceptivizing this shit before anybody else was. And not only was he doing that, I mean, it's just cool. It's this multimedia piece that had this really unique new art form sort of laid within it, and told a great story. Told two stories, actually, really. He told the story of himself and his trials, and the story of Little Nemo and his adventures in a very short and interesting form. Not only that, he took the opportunity to show off some interesting tricks that animation makes possible to sort of prove the art form to the world. Stretching and shrinking characters, changing their proportions, pushing them in space and pulling them back. He really uses this as an opportunity to make the art form viable to the rest of the world and to show them what it could be. And it did. It immediately proved the medium, and it got people excited, for what was to come next. So his next short film, speaking of next, was How a Mosquito Operates. And it's a comically accurate short of a massive mosquito harassing a man who's trying to sleep. It's relatable, as always, with his works, kind of tapping into these inner experiences we have. Everybody's experienced an obnoxious mosquito, but he kind of makes it whimsical and magical in a way by making it this, dinosaur proportioned mosquito. And with this, he took another opportunity again to innovate on his animation techniques and the polish he'd already established with Little Nemo, especially in the movements. And so this was one of the first examples of animation I actually learned about in animation history class, and I still remember it clearly all these years later because it's just such a great example of this realistic movement and how you can take a cartoonized character, a very simplified character, and really make it feel real to some extent or another. But yeah, it's been years, and I still remember it. So I'm getting old, basically, is what I'm saying. Anyway, in 1914, McCay released Gertie the Dinosaur. In this animated short, in spite of featuring a basically no-name character, it ended up being his most important short film ever. Gertie was the first animated character to really come alive in a way that audiences connected with. And she wasn't just a dinosaur or a series of filled-in lines. You know, she wasn't this fantasy. In a lot of ways, she was so believable, such a real living creature with personality and weight, that the audiences started to believe that she was actually a real character. Like, some people freaked out. And every movement felt fluid and accurate. That was really the key, this feeling, you know. People were really feeling the character. It wasn't just about looking at the world and copying it one-to-one. It wasn't just about making this goofy animated creature that people could laugh at. McCay knew from the start that it was about entertaining, but it was also about connecting with people, and I think that was the big key, this element of feeling in his art. And he talked about this in regard to his philosophy on work, and we'll get into that again more later on. And sadly, it kind of is what caused his career to be as incredible as it was, but again, this contradictive element of causing his career to ultimately basically collapse. So foreshadowing there for you. But anyway, it was really about striking this right balance, and Gertie was the first time anyone had ever done this. And as always, again, McCay was quite the entertainer. He had her bow to the audience and cry when she was scolded. She stumbled around clumsily, she played tricks, and she ate imaginary apples even. And alongside her, McCay actually performed in vaudeville shows, interacting with the screen in real time. So it was almost like there was a real dinosaur there. It was kind of like the hologram shows we have today in a way, before the hologram shows existed. So it's probably something that he, in one way or another, inspired without people even realizing it. Again, an innovation that McCay brought to the world that basically nobody realizes. So that might be a bit of a stretch, but you understand what I mean. This interactive element is pretty incredible. So, you might be thinking, how is this even possible for one guy? He didn't have a team. He did it all before Paramount Pictures, Fox, Universal, or any of the other studios that were coming up at the time, or that were fully established even at the time. And while it seems kind of crazy, the answer is like more than his talent, which he had plenty of, or his experience, which he also had some of from doing his work with the newspapers, or any of the help he had. It was really just hard work. He worked really, 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 really hard, like a lot of independent creators do. And he just brought it to the next level. He drew every frame himself. He didn't have any assistance, no shortcuts, and he didn't have really any funding or support. It was a decade before Disney, 2 decades before Steamboat Willie, so before the next really like world-shattering, earth-shattering, that's the right word, earth-shattering kind of animated short was Gertie, 2 decades before. He might not have invented animation, he might not have been its father, so to speak, in a way, in that sense, but he cared for it, and he nurtured it, and he elevated it to the high art that it is now. He took it from a gimmick to something special. Winsor McCay really laid the foundations that made Studio Ghibli possible with his love of nature and its motion. He manifested the message of Disney with his whimsicality and magic, and most importantly, he showed us that with some hard work, a lot of hard work, we can make our dreams come true. Literally. I mean, like, little Nemo, like, in the world of dreams and stuff and whatnot. So, I'm sure you see the connection there. Anyway, why isn't his name on every animation studio's wall today? Why don't you hear his name in public more often? Why don't people claim him as their major influence? Well, some people do. A lot of people do, like, when you look deeper into their work. But there's a lot to why he's not more popular, because the truth is he's not nearly as well known as people like Walt Disney or Hayao Miyazaki are. Part of it's, obviously the proximity in time, but there's a lot more to it. So let's get into that. Well, first of all, McCay was pretty unique in that he was a one-man show in this endeavor. While other people were building animation studios and production lines like Disney and Miyazaki did later on, McCay clung to doing everything himself. He believed that art should be personal and not industrial. Again, this aspect of feeling was so important to him. This might be why he was able to beat the quality of the big studios at the time, but it kept him ultimately from making a bigger impact. So second, he worked full-time as a political cartoonist, as many cartoonists did at the time, and he worked for Hearst newspapers, and his editor hated his animation. He told him it was a waste of time and, just basically disparaged it and made him feel bad about doing it. So he decided to make his films in secret, at night, using his own money. As mentioned earlier, he really beat the odds in spite of having little to no money behind him and little to no support from anybody. And he memorialized that in his first animated multimedia film, Little Nemo, as mentioned before. So if you really want to see what that's all about after this video is done in just a second, you should really go check that out. It's on YouTube. You can see it really easily, so please do that. Third, even back then, technology was moving quickly. The studios with big teams and budgets began to dominate with the new technology and advancements, and McCay refused to conform. At the end of the day, he was an artist, not a businessman or a marketer. All of this seems a bit sad, and it might feel like McCay was forgotten. But don't worry. Modern comics owe a massive debt to his page layouts and visual pacing. Cartoonists like Art Spiegelman and Chris Ware cite him as a direct influence. Even Inception's famous folding city scene, McCay did that already in 1907, by hand. Miyazaki's dream sequences in films like The Wind Rises, idealized European flair like in Howl's Moving Castle, are clearly inspired by Little Nemo. In fact, Miyazaki even stated himself that he was directly inspired by the forests and scenery of Little Nemo in the creation of the scenery that was used in his highly acclaimed film Princess Mononoke, which, if you've seen it, you know it's incredible. He even went on, Miyazaki that is, to pitch an animated film, Little Nemo: Adventures in Slumberland, in the 80s, which ended up being co-produced by other studios in Japan and America, not including him due to some difficulties between the US and Japan and communication. Here are some of the heavy hitters that did end up being involved in the finished product.
Director Christopher Columbus of Home Alone 1 and 2. Director William Hertz of Fantasia and Pinocchio. Academy Award-winning songwriters Richard and Robert Sherman of Mary Poppins. Legendary writer Ray Bradbury and Oscar winner Mickey Rooney. The list goes on. And the critics love Little Nemo. Imaginative and original, says Daily Variety. A classic, elegantly drawn as the most memorable of Disney creations, writes the New York Times. A family find, much better than Fern Gully, says Michael Medved of Sneak Previews. 4 stars, spectacular and sparkling, writes Parent Film Review. You've got to see it, says Gary Franklin. And millions did. Little Nemo's theatrical release has covered more than 1,200 theaters nationwide, playing in 200 of the top 200 markets, and charting on Variety's top theatrical hit list for 12 consecutive weeks.
But you can even go online on YouTube and other places probably too, and see this animated short that his studio produced. So you can see what the movie that was ultimately produced in the US, which is still one of my favorites in spite of some flaws it has, what it would have looked like if Ghibli had made it. They were pretty dedicated to this, and I think Miyazaki was really looking at this and seeing just how incredible McCay was and wanting to honor him. In many ways, he's of the same mind. He does a lot of his work himself in the concepting phase and so on. It's just a lot harder to really make big animated productions without a team, so. Whether it be Pixar's storyboarding or Disney's polished whimsy, Studio Ghibli's surreal worlds, all of them carry a bit of McCay. People just don't always know it. Not even the artist sometimes. Although if you're an animator, you probably know McCay. But anyway, Winsor McCay was an illustrator, he was an animator, a director, an inventor, and a certified goofball, if I do say so myself. But most importantly, he was a dreamer, and I don't mean that in a cliched way. He dared to look into the depths of human consciousness and our place in the world. He conjured up dinosaurs from the past, fantastical spiritual beings, and cities of the future, all the while focusing on the positives, pushing us forward, and doing so while the rest of the world pushed against and ridiculed him. It must have been hard, in many ways, to have this bright image of the future and of the world while people are treating you the way they treated him, in spite of all of his talents. But he chose to do it anyway. He dreamed of a better world. He dreamed of a world in which dreams and imagination can come to life for everyone to see and be appreciated. He was a true artist, and one that we should all aspire to. And while the world may have forgotten him, I'm confident that you won't. Winsor McCay, the most important artist you've never heard of. Until now. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. This one, although it's my first of this subject, it means a lot to me, and that's why I chose Winsor McCay for the first subject and put a good amount of effort into my script here and into presenting this in a meaningful and interesting way. So, thank you again. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you next time. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It would be great to see you here again. Take care. Keep on dreaming. Bye-bye.
This February, Hendale Pictures, the company that brought you Platoon, Terminator, The Last Emperor, and Hoosiers, proudly presents on video an instant animated classic for sell-through. 10 years in the making, a $35 million budget, and Hollywood's top writers, producers, and directors combining their talents to create a highly entertaining animated spectacular. Little Nemo, Adventures in Slumberland.
The animated celebration of the year is on video cassette.
Yippee!
Little Nemo, Adventures in Slumberland. Take off with a young explorer who must save the life of a noble king.
Nemo, give me the royal scepter!
Outmatch the power of a mighty monster. And win the heart of a beautiful princess.
No one has ever accepted a royal invitation in his underwear.
The Boston Globe proclaims Little Nemo to be a marvelous piece of fantasy. The Washington Post declares it impressively grand. A great film, writes the New York Post, while Newhouse newspapers call it an elegantly animated magic carpet ride.
Oh, I haven't had this much fun in years!
Neither have I.
Take home the magic of Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland, just $24.95. Each video comes with a mail-in rebate worth $5 with purchases of Tropicana orange juice. Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland, coming soon wherever videos are sold.